It's time to tackle the artist's least favorite topic, which is how to draw hands. I got really good at drawing hands in high school because in classes that I didn't find particularly interesting, I didn't have anything to draw in front of me except my own hands, so I just would practice every day. And that's honestly the number one piece of advice I have for getting good at drawing anything is pick a topic that you really want to get good at, pick an object, and just draw it, just consistently. And the thing is, the first 100 drawings, the first 200 drawings are going to be absolutely terrible, and that's fine, because they don't need to go anywhere. But you're never going to be really good at drawing anything on the first time, just like you're never going to be good at playing a particular piece of music for the first time. And the main topic I wanted to talk about is that the number one barrier to being a good artist is getting over your self-confidence issues. And that, obviously easier said than done. It's true of everything. Just be good at things. But I think it's particularly true with the arts, and I think it's really true about drawing hands. If you think you're going to be bad at it, you're probably going to be bad at it, especially if you don't try. So the first step, also I have no idea how Bob Ross did this. This is impossible to get the right angle. It's really hard. And you have to project your voice. These things are a lot more difficult than I expected. Also, I'm my leg is over here somewhere. Anyways, it's a real rough night, guys. But the first step to actually making the art is I find it makes it a lot easier to learn how to draw the shape of something if I'm not concerned about the colors that I'm using. If I think that I'm using the wrong shades, what really helps is if I'm just picking really ridiculous, weird colors and going with it. I don't know if that's a helpful trick for any of you, but it's what I do. So I'm going to draw 3 hands, and so I picked 3 different color palettes. So pick 3 colors so you can differentiate the highlights and the shadows and the midtones. So one of the hands is going to be this periwinkle color. Another one is going to be kind of a seafoam blue palette, and the third one is going to be this orange pink palette also. So like with every other thing, you just gotta start. So like my previous videos, start with the midtone and just go for it. What I like to do is I literally just position my hand in different shapes, figure out what I'm trying to do. In a later video I'm going to be painting avocados into these hands, so it's good to find positions that are going to be useful. So the first hand is going to be up here, and it's going to be holding one by the tip, and the other one is going to be down here, and it's going to be grasping it. And then the one that's coming in from here, I'm not sure what it's going to do yet, but we'll find out. So going on this one, God, this is actually really difficult. See, if this turns out poorly, it's really because of the angles. But you just got to go for it. So. I always start with the thumb, just because it's so different from the rest of the hand, and I know that once it's positioned pretty well, I'm going to be able to position the other fingers. And it's also totally fine if the shapes look weird, and I'm not going for accuracy in this. It can look kind of strange or alien, and that's fine too, as long as you give off the general concept of what a hand looks like. And that's why practice is good too, because if I were actually painting something very serious or something that had to look realistic, obviously I'd want to be better at getting the angles perfect and the proportions more accurate. But for just learning how to draw hands, doesn't really matter. So the first thing is the thumb, and it comes in this oblong shape. I like to think about the meaty parts of the hand to make thicker. So when this thumb comes in, this comes in later with shading. This is going to be obviously a highlight here, but then when we're just extending out the rest of the hand, the rest of the fingers, you just gotta go for it. Just think of them as hot dogs, and it helps somehow. And then for the pinky, I do the pinky separately from the other 3 main fingers, just because it helps me create 3-dimensionality. I find that the pinky is usually coming in at a little bit of a different angle, and then I just pull it back into the rest of the hand. So yeah, that is a hand. It's not a particularly pretty one, but it's a hand, and that's all that matters for the moment, for the lowest layer of the painting. I think I'll draw the arms too. Why not? So then you look and you see where does the wrist, how the palm of the hand is usually a lot thicker than the wrist and the rest of the arm. So you just gotta just eyeball it. It's fine if it's not accurate. It doesn't need to be. So that's not bad for a first pass. Obviously, like, the tips of the fingers are a little bit larger, and we'll fix that up when we're shading things, but that's, you know, it is what it is. So I think for the moment I'm just going to leave this one as the sketch. I'll come back to it later, but I'll go in with the red for the one up here. So the thing that I find really useful when it comes to drawing hands is just practicing every different position possible. So obviously we get pretty good when we're kids at drawing just like hands palm out, or like the back of the palm. But obviously if you're going into something like cartooning, or if you're going into fine art painting, you're going to have to paint your hands in like a variety of different characteristics, because, you know, obviously no one in normal paintings just like has their hands out like this all the time. That'd be an interesting variety of paintings. Maybe I'll do a series of those later. But yeah, sometimes you have something that's just really weird. So when you're drawing something like this, you know, the typical like rabbit or whatever, I start with this upside down teardrop shape, and I always start in the middle. When I was a kid, I would often in classes be taught that you should always start drawing the middle of the face for portraits. And I never really liked that. I found it really difficult for me in particular, just because I like starting with eyes, or I'd want to draw, you know, the outside of the face, or just, I never really found comfort in just starting in the middle because I felt really lost. And so honestly, it's really up to you. Just practice. Just draw things a variety of ways and figure out what you feel most comfortable doing. So this is this part. Notice I'm not doing the shadows. It would be very hard to do that because everything is in black and very confusing. I'm not tracing anything. But that's also a really useful method if you want to start out doing that too, just so that you get the mental memory of, you know, when you're tracing a shadow, you learn, your body learns how to mimic these arcs and these shapes, and the more you do it and the more you practice, the better you'll get. And I promise, like, I've been drawing for my entire life, and obviously these shapes aren't perfect on the first pass. There's something you work at. But now that you have this, you can go in and add the tip of the index finger, and go up, and then this will come back in. I found the hardest thing in drawing hands is trying to figure out where the knuckles are and how they work, particularly because they're just like a really strange shape. They're not like a sphere or anything. It's just like, and they're always really different based on how you bend your fingers. So I'm still not sure exactly how to work that out, and it's different every time. I have a different position for the hands that I'm drawing. So you just kind of gotta, as I said, it's all with practice. And so this is going to be the third finger, coming up here, and maybe one more, just for context. So that's the second hand. I want to move, but I'm not going to move. We're just going to go for it. So the third hand is going to, what are we going to do? We're just going to decide. Maybe something like this. Maybe pointing. That's probably a good idea. So let's see. Normally, you'll get good at drawing one hand and not the other one, which is really unfortunate because I assume each one of you is either left-handed or right-handed. Those ambidextrous lucky people are, you know, great artists. But this would be an excellent instance where if I just had like a picture, what I would do is I would take a picture of my hand on my phone and then literally just like draw it based on that. Which actually, you know what, I'm gonna do that because that will make this a lot easier. But just find a position your hand feels comfortable in, and then go like that. Okay, that makes this a lot easier. So what you can see is you're just gonna like come in here, and for the most part, this is just gonna be like one swoop of your finger coming in, and then the thumb coming out. Easier said than done. This looks very not human, but it's fine. You're going to have this other finger come in here in the background, and then a couple others. A few general principles I want to add in here. The first is that if whatever you're drawing does not look physically possible, try to make it look physically possible. So in this photo, you don't see this like the way the finger is coming up in this, but the way I accidentally drew the finger, actually nothing is an accident. There's no happy accidents. There are no accidents. Everything's intentional here. But the way I drew this, it makes much more sense for there to be a finger here. One of the most important lessons that I learned when I was in painting classes, I've only taken 2 painting classes, but one of the most important lessons I learned is that no matter what something looks like in reality, sometimes the best method is to paint it not the way that it looks. Because basically, paintings mess with our eyes. They always are going to be, in some ways, optical illusions, because you're trying to make something three-dimensional out of a two-dimensional surface. And so, in this instance, because I've just been drawing hands so much, I knew that this was something that was going to fix this to make it look right, and that's honestly intuition, that's more practice, that's not something that I can teach on an instance-per-instance basis. But I know, like, if I were drawing this and I hadn't put that in, my teacher would come behind me and say, oh, you know, you need to make this look more realistic. Turn your hand so that if you had drawn it like this, what would you see? And you realize you'd see that part of your hand. So I think this is good for now. We'll see what this turns into later. Maybe I'll add another hand or 2. But thank you so much for watching, and see what happens next. Thanks!